Hi, folks. Welcome to Money and Politics. It's Friday, the 29th of October, and we have some news to record for Humbl this afternoon. As we knew earlier in the week, Brian Foote, the CEO of Humbl, had said that he was seeking changes to the agreement on the B shares. The B shares have long been somewhat of a boogeyman, you might say, to some of those who are concerned about dilution of the Humbl shares. So let's take a look at what the news was. Brian Foote was going out after the changes to limit the number of shares and seeking a vote from those who were the B share holders. This announcement came out then just right as the market closed, that Humbl announces an amendment to the Certificate of Incorporation to institute preferred B conversion limits. And it goes on to say that Humbl announces that its board of directors and 85% supermajority of the B share preferred shareholders approved an amendment to the Certificate of Incorporation. The amendment limits the amount that all B share shareholders who own more than 750 Series B shares can convert into common stock in any given month during the period beginning December 2021 and ending May 2023. Now here's where we get right here to the key part of the agreement. And this says, as we read more specifically, the application B share holders are limited into converting no more than the following percentage of their B shares into common stock per month during the restriction period. And that is 5% for December 2021 and January 2022. That should be January 2022. Their agreement says 2021. And B, 3% for February 2022 to May 2023. In addition, the number of Series B shares available for issuance was reduced from 900,000 to 700,000. It goes on to say in the announcement that Humbl CEO Brian Foote has also committed to locking up all of his B shares through December 31, 2022, at the very minimum. Okay? This group, his group, is 43.5% of the total B shares. And it goes on to say that Humbl co-founders Jeff Henshaw, Michelle Rivera, and Karen Garcia have also committed to selling no more than 1% of their Series B holdings per quarter through December 31, 2022. Let me read that again. They have committed to selling no more than 1% of their Series B shares per quarter from this December, or I should say through per quarter through December 31, 2022. So there you go. And it says it is important to note that the officers mentioned above will be subject to the same restrictions as the other Series B shareholders through May 2023 and are also at all times subject to the most stringent selling limitations imposed by Rule 144. And then we have a quote here by Brian Foote. This amendment should show the market that the co-founders and other Series B shareholders are all committed to the long-term vision of Humbl and willing to limit conversions to prove it. That, according to Brian Foote. He went on to say, I want to thank all the Series B shareholders for working with us to arrive at a supermajority agreement so that we can get back to our core focus of building the company. And so that is the news that hopefully will make a difference to those who were very concerned about whether their holdings in Humbl would be diluted by the B shareholders. Obviously, the B shareholders have put a lot of restrictions on there. You can go and see that letter. It's posted in a variety of places. It's on Twitter. If you search for Humbl Pay on Twitter, you'll find that letter. Sorry that I kind of stumbled over some of that, but there was that one typo, and I was trying to look for others as I was writing that. My thought is that we did not have to worry too much about dilution anyway, but that certainly this is the leadership of Humbl, not only Brian, but the co-founders and the other B shareholders, putting forth a strong effort to limit the concerns of the common holders as to whether or not they were going to allow the shares of Humbl to be diluted. Now, as I say, that came out shortly here after the market closed. We have the close today on Friday the 29th at 65 cents, up ever so slightly. You could see pretty much it's been flat throughout the day, not a whole lot of movement one way or the other. It was interesting that we did get the little bump right here near the very edge. And we'll have to see if how the market responds on Monday when we get that. Is that going to solve the fears that some people had? I can't say. The volume today was 3.6 million shares, I believe that is. As I always tell you, it's a lot smaller on my screen than it is on yours. It's less than the average volume of 4.3 over the last 10 days. So that's the big news on Humbl. And this is the thing with Humbl that we should remember. We can always end up having some news come out, whether it's something like this, something of another merger, whatever. And, Humbl, I think you have to be ready for. It can be an explosive stock, and I think will be continuing to be explosive throughout 2022 as we go forward. Now, I've talked earlier today or this week about InMode. I've talked about it a couple of times. I think you're all familiar with it. I was saying when their earnings came out and their earnings were strong, that the stock price fell initially down to $80, and I was rather harsh, just saying that was a chart of stupidity for people selling and having the price drop to $80 when the stock came out with strong earnings, beating on revenue and beating on earnings. And this is where the larger lesson here, folks, is not to talk about just InMode, but when we have these earnings, and you're going to see this not every time, but periodically. This is a buying opportunity in my mind. When you see a company that has been growing strongly, as InMode has, you get that company or any other company growing strongly, and people keep setting the bar higher and higher and higher to ridiculous levels of expectations. And when InMode beat the expectations, that they sell off, well, to me, that's just dumb. So where are we today? Well, here we are. I believe the earnings were, I'd have to go look if that was Monday or Tuesday, but now we're just under $95 a share. And remember, this had a 2-for-1 split back in September. So this is a killer stock. Now, any stock that runs up, and this is a 5-day chart here. Let's look at the 1-month chart. It hasn't gone real crazy. I mean, it was sitting there at about $85, $86 or so from about the middle of October. But if we look at the year-to-date chart, as I said in a previous video, that is a thing of beauty. It's not just spiking up to artificial highs that you can't keep. If we go to a 1-year chart, it's not much different, but I remain very strong on InMode, and I would continue to say this is a stock that you really want to hold on to for a prolonged period of time. Real briefly, let's just touch base on some of the other things we have going on here. We've got Zynex here, and their earnings are going to be coming out on Tuesday. So they went up about 1%, close to 1.5 today. The volume, 2.3 million, I'm rounding up, which is stronger than, the little bit stronger than their average, not over the top. The thing is, just to remind you that they're going to be coming out with their earnings on Tuesday, and that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. The other main thing I've promoted over the year, aside from Humbl and aside from InMode, is the leveraged indexes. And let's take a look real quick when we have this afternoon the TQQQ, which is the 3 times leveraged on the NASDAQ. And it's at an all-time high right here at 155.16. And again, this split 2-for-1 back in January. We're looking, that's at a 5-year chart. Let's go to the year-to-date chart. So it's split back in January, 2-for-1. If we go to, let's say a 1-year chart, that goes back to, well, let's go back to the 5-year for a moment, because I pointed out to people, here's where we fell. Back in March of 2020, right after the COVID shutdown in February, and we didn't know how long this was going to last. So right around St. Patrick's Day was the low of the market. And on an adjusted level, I remember that the TQQ was at 16, but since it's split 2-for-1, let's call it $8, because that's where it is now on an adjusted basis. So if you had the equivalent of $8,000 invested in March of 2020, March, let's say 17 of 2020, $8,000, that would today be worth $155,000. That's real money, folks. Now, do I think that the TQQ is just going to go up indefinitely? Well, it all depends what you mean by indefinitely. If you're saying, could it go down sharply from here, an all-time high, over the next year or 2 years? Yes, it could, because you never know what bad news is going to come out. And this is something that will drop like a rock because of its leveraged version. It'll go down 3 times faster as well as go up 3 times faster. But if you want to look over the long term, I don't know how long of a max we can get. This goes back to what I have to, I can't even read it. It's way too small. It's about 1-point type. But what I would say is, if you want to look at this over, holding it for 5 years, if you want to make just a quick buck, I don't know that this is the thing that I would do. If I want you to be aware of it, though. So what I would say is, when the market sharply goes down, as it did with COVID, this is the kind of thing you want to buy. And do it in stages. When I bought it, I didn't know that it was going to be at St. Patrick's Day, that was going to be the very bottom. I was buying some around that time, but I just didn't throw every dime I had into it. In hindsight, I might have, but we don't have hindsight when we're, investing at the moment. If we had, as I say so often, if we knew what was going to happen, we'd all be billionaires by the end of the year. So how do you play this? Especially if the market goes down sharply, let the market fall, and then when it kind of like maybe gets down to ridiculous levels, go in and buy some on the way down. Just don't go crazy. Don't put all your money in at one time, okay? That's what I want to really drive home to you. I think those are the things that I really wanted to bring to your attention today. So big news on Humbl. And again, I would applaud Brian Foote, applaud all the leadership at Humbl who have gone out of their way to make I think the shareholders, the average shareholders in Humbl, try to do their best to feel secure and to make changes, and they've done, I think, just a fantastic job in doing that. If you again want to give me an email, you can do that. And in the meantime, if you can, I'm going to say goodbye, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, folks. Take care.